go away.
Oh, there's no audio. I can't hear you.
Ah, there we go. Hello and welcome. Namaste. I hope you're all having a great day. For those that will find us, retrospectively, I'm here with Toby Shinobi. He is General Shinobi. We're going to be just having a chat. We just decided like 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, like, hey, should we do it? So we're like, yeah, I got an hour. Let's do it. So we're not quite sure what's going to come up, but it's probably going to be something decoding the mystical in the world, and taking a look at those hidden elements that are dancing in plain sight. Welcome, dear brother. How are you doing?
Hey, man. Yeah, really good. Looking forward to this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So I have no idea where we should start. We should probably start at the beginning. Which bit is the beginning? I'm just sharing this to Facebook quickly.
Okay.
Decoding.
Well, I guess.
Mystic.
Yeah. One place to start. We could start at the beginning with time, and perception, and our perception of time, and then bring into the conversation energy, frequency, and vibration, like the 3, 6, and 9. Yeah. So yeah, I guess we start at the beginning with time, and I'll just bring to the table how our perception creates our reality, and how with this artificial eye, artificial intelligence, this kind of false layer of reality that's being built around us, how important it is to be centered, have an anchor point, and the word unk or unk, you have the car, the bar, the uk, is another name for I. So that would be our orientation, because it seems that there's certain powers and energies in the world that are trying to disorientate us, try and move us away from our path, because we're travelers. We travel. We're constantly traveling, right? We're dreamers. We imagine things and we bring it into this realm here. This is a realm of potentiality. So with time, there's Chronos and Kairos. There's kind of more chronological linear time and more flow time. Flow time is kind of like dream time. And this is kind of what's being cast out, hidden. And people think time is just this linear cube-like structure, order. But at the same time, there's always a duality or a different perspective of this, which is the more watery chaos. The chaos is what is the creative force as well. It's not just the destructive force; it's a creative force. It's the pure potential, and that is the dreaming, which would be in Egypt would be the bar, the human-headed bird, which travels to different realms, to the astral realm. And I think that this is so important to hold on to, the part of us which dreams is our soul, and basically this is what's under threat at the moment with this artificial reality and this AI which has no emotion, no creativity of its own, and people are outsourcing their creativity rather than going inwards and finding the gold which is within them, within the innermost cave, in the subconscious. Through the rivers in our own minds, people are looking outwards for guidance rather than going inwards and igniting that spark within. So it's a few things to bring to the table there. Your mic's not on again.
Thank you, dear brother. I'm just posting this onto YouTube just so that people can see us and know that we are here, for we are here. And I think that this is like a really great, oh gosh, is there an echo in this room, or is it just me? It's just me. I think like when we look at time is probably one of the things that has been the most under attack. Yeah, if we're going to be completely fair about it, because we literally are being conditioned to think of time as some weird kind of a thing on its own. And when we consider like what time really is, if we like really sit down and like wrap our minds around it, we'll start understanding that like what's a dimension. Yeah, probably a good place to start is like how time sort of wraps itself around us. If you imagine like 3 dimensions, right? And we are often sort of try to imagine that we're living in a 3-dimensional world, but we're not living in a 3-dimensional world, right? If you imagine 2 dimensions and there's infinite stacks of 2 dimensions, or almost infinite stacks of 2 dimensions, then you get this 3rd-dimensional reality, right? What happens when you've got like lots and lots of 3rd-dimensional realities stacked on top of each other? Well, you get something that is reflecting the potential for change of 3D. The potential of change for 2D is depth, right? And substance. 2D is a conceptual thing. 3D becomes like space, right? 4D becomes time. If you've got a whole lot of 3D near to infinite things here, and you put them all on top of each other, they're overwhelming. You can't experience this. You can't experience this all at once. So your consciousness then takes little chunks of it one at a time. And so we call those moments, right? The moments, because we're only able to process so much of reality at one point in time. And so we sort of go from segment to segment, moment to moment, experiencing one part of that 3D clip. If you want to think of it as like little blocks on a film, they move from one to another to one to another. And the choice that we have is to shape which block comes next. And that's the free will. That's the choice that we have, because like there's this multiverse of potential around us. And so we've been taught to think of time as this very abstract thing, when actually time and space are really literally connected. Namaste, Hollowbone Hawk. Yeah, we just jumped on out of the blue. So I think like this concept of what time is, we then assume that because we're experiencing this linear thread of time, that's what time is. But that's just the way that we're experiencing it, because there's too much of it there to experience at once. So how is it that people can see the future? This is something that people don't, they come up with elaborate explanations, when actually, if all the time the future and the past exists right here, right now as potential, and that we are threading a needle through different segments, then in theory you would be able to access a time frame that hasn't happened yet now. And so premonitions and prophecy becomes a real possibility, and the same for past lives. But with that other model, the way they want to have us conceptualize time as some abstract thing, it doesn't make sense. It makes it so easy for them to sell us this materializing, manifesting theory that this matter is just all there is. I don't know what you think, brother. Your mic is also off, by the way.
I think this is going to be a common theme. Yeah, I think that with our perception of time and how we're kind of I guess programmed to view it is to keep us kind of constricted, because we measure time by the amount of light emitted, and if we emit a lot of light, then we're going to have more creative potential. But I think that would stop the few having a lot. Everybody would be glowing, we'd be bringing things into existence. And so I think that it kind of, our perception of time kind of suppresses our spark. And with that as well, talking about past lives and seeing into the future and stuff, I think that it's like our DNA. We have a lot of dormant DNA. I can't remember the amount, but it's a lot of junk DNA, they call it. It's the same with the subconscious. We're not really tuned in with our subconscious mind. I think the two are entwined, because with death, for example, because that's really how we measure time. We measure time, we're alive, and then we die, and then that's it. So we just have this small space, but really we're infinite light beings, and that we need to die many times when we're alive. And all that means is to let go of the layers that we've built up over us, over our divine spark, which isn't just us, it would be from generations before us too. And I think the goal, the game, is to get that spark from the innermost cave, to get the gold and bring it into the world. And by the barriers and stuff, I mean trauma and stuff which has been passed down, or another word for it would be programming, trauma. It's the same thing, because I see our subconscious mind as the backstage. And right now, the veil in the world is getting thinner, but also the veil in our subconscious mind is getting thinner. So I think now there's a lot of very powerful energy that we can become the puppet masters of our own mind. That's the choice for us to do that. Or if we don't do that, other forces are going to be controlling our subconscious via programming, by radio, television, things like that. So where I'm going with this is that with time and space and our perception of reality, I think it's really important to understand what death is and what to die is. And if you look at the etymology of die, you have multiple dice is called die. When you change color, that is to die. So this kind of whole death thing, people are so scared of death that they don't really live their life properly. That's the kind of paradox. And I think that once you let go of the fear of death, then you can really live. And I think that is the same as crossing the rivers in our mind, rather than when we die, rather than crossing the river Styx, the Archon. We can do that when we're alive. And I think that's how we get other fragments of ourselves. And I think that when we start emitting more light, when we gather more fragments, more gold. Also, I'll just mention gold and water are both never diminish. Water is always existing, it just changes form. Gas, solid, liquid, plasma, it can move through solid objects. Gold as well is the same. And also they're both to do with currents, currency and electric current. And the monetary system, the currency, gold is in the banks, and that they're entwined. Water is related with Mem, the 13th letter in Hebrew. 13 is the death card, and also gold. It's AU. A is the number 1. U is the number 21. So then you have a 1 and a 3, which is 13. So you have a 13 of water, 13 of gold, and 13 of the death card. And I think this journey of death, of dying, is about currency, and the whole monetary system of this whole energy transferring and energy taken. I think that as we're shifting towards sort of new systems, this kind of digital world, people are hopefully going to start going inwards, because they don't want to be digitized. They don't want a digital identity. They want to actually start going inwards. So perhaps what's happening on the outside world would give people a bit of a kick up the arse to actually go inwards and be like, actually, I don't need all of this monetary gain from outside. The real wealth is knowledge, applied knowledge, intuition, wisdom. And I think that is the real currency. And then that is how we gather. We do alchemize it. We turn the lead into gold. We dissolve, let go, change our color, shift our perception of reality, climb the rungs of the ladder, which is our DNA spiral. Learn to swim and not be stuck in the current stream of the current scene of what's going outside, but trust our intuition, go inwards through the rivers in our own mind, and then we're able to beam and not have solid barriers, but have a vortex around us where we can kind of let things come in, dissolve it, let them go, and also bring our pure potential to the world. And that's why we're all here, to alchemize that. And yeah. Went off on a bit of a tangent there, but
no, absolutely, it's all good, man. It's perfect. Let's see, am I sharing the right feed just to make sure I'm sharing the right image? No, I'm not sharing the right image. Share this in tab instead. There we go. Now I'm sharing the right image. So you know, I think like what you're saying is rather poignant. And namaste, how you doing? The Star, lovely to have you here. Namaste, Omaros, Dead Machine. Hope you're good. Hope you're well and thriving. The lads are at it. Yeah, we are. Big love from New Zealand, man. How you doing? Are you good? I hope you guys are all having a good day. It's really hot here. It's sunny in the UK. There's sun everywhere. I hope it's sunny where you are. The sun brings so much love. Speaking of the sun, and speaking of what you were talking about, you know, you were talking about life and, you know, not being alive, leaving this world, coming to this world. You can think of the moon as being the regulatory force of like what regulates life and death, right? And the cycles and the seasons of what's, you know, what we can expect in terms of like the crops will grow, they will pass away, we'll reap them. And the sun then represents all of that life, right? And you mentioned the sun. And I think it's so true that we are living in fear of life. And so on some level, we fundamentally fear the sun. And you mentioned the sun, so I thought, well, let's pull up this periodic tale of the sun. I think it's really important to be able to get a grip of it.
Oh, your mic's gone again.
No, I asked my dog to go and lie over there because he fell asleep next to me and he's running in his sleep. But it's a Malamute running in his sleep. His big paws going da 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 da. He does that. It's okay, my big dog. I wake him up now. He's looking at me with a dirty look, like you woke me up, dude. But he didn't know what noise he was making. He was knocking my table with his leg, you know, when he's running. But yeah, so the very idea of the gold, if we look at it here, so we can see the atomic number is 7 and 9, which is rather interesting if you think about the representation of the enneagram, what 7 represents, the 7 spheres, the 7 hermetic principles, and how they become an expression of the enneagram, which means that there's 2 aspects of rhythm and there's 2 aspects of vibration. For the first 3 hermetic principles make a triangle, right? And the lower point of that triangle is touching the sphere, the second trinity, if you will. So if you want to imagine it like that, you can imagine a downward pointing triangle, right? Like, is that right? Yeah. My fingers aren't making a very good equilateral triangle, but imagine a downward pointing triangle where you've got vibration pointing downwards to manifest, and then an upward pointing triangle where you've got manifestation pulling into the sphere of polarity and the sphere of rhythm. And then rhythm is part of a triangle that relates to rhythm, cause and effect, and the gender generation element. So you've got these 3 sets of triangles which make up the enneagram. And so you've got vibration in the upper realm and vibration in the astral realm. And then you've got rhythm in the astral realm and rhythm in the etheric realm. So rhythm becomes like rather fundamental, which is why in shamanism we focus on the principle of rhythm, and we use rhythm because it can lift you into the astral and the etheric. And, you know, once you're into the astral, you can even touch vibration with rhythm because rhythm manages vibration. So that's like really, you know, fundamental if you want to look at the principles. And so when we look at this elemental chart, we see we got the 7 and the 9. It makes up obviously 16, brings us back to the number 7. So we are essentially looking at the 7 fundamental, you know, the 7 framework of the universe. And we look at the atomic weight, and we see it's 196, which is, once again, you know, that's 19 and 6, which is 25, which is once again 7. And then we see after the point, the fraction, we've got 96657, which is obviously 12 plus 12, which is 24, plus 9, which is 33. So we've got this interesting little series of numbers playing out here, right? We've got the 7 and the 9, we've got the 2 and the 5, and we've got the 33, which makes up the 6. And it also is, you'll notice it's a cubic form. We're talking about the cube, right? So the gold is cubic in the way that its structure is. So there's something quite powerful when we look at this element of gold and how gold has defined our world and how gold defines life, right? Because the sun, I imagine, and here's me going out on a limb, I imagine that gold is coming out of the sun. How's that for an interesting concept? And the sun is streaming out like gold, but it's not physical substance. It becomes physical substance and congeals, maybe like some kind of a crystallizing residue. How's that for an interesting concept? Which is a part of the process of life. And that gold is a product or a byproduct of life through the process of the sun's energy. Because why would we be relating to the sun, to gold? The ancients knew things that we don't know. They had insights to physics and chemistry and knowledge. They built structures on this planet that we still do not know, still do not understand. We're still trying to talk nonsense about rolling little wood rolling contests to move around like 70-ton chunks of rock, which is like, it's an inane, ridiculous concept, especially when you really think about how big some of these rocks are. And some of the rocks are like 1,000 tons, you know. There's a massive phallic thing that's just, it's ridiculous how big this phallus is in Ethiopia, and it's a single piece of rock that was moved. It was moved. You can see where it was quarried. There's no way we could have done that with rollers. So we've got to sort of like contemplate what this reality is and why we are so fixated on the cube. Saturn's cube seems to be all defining. And while we're talking about that, I suppose Saturn's cube is probably a good place to also look at the sigil of Saturn and number square of Saturn always tends to be, for me, such an enlightening thing to consider. Because when we really start paying attention to what it is that we're looking at, it's almost defies logic to how much information this little glyph can pack, right? And so here we go. We're looking at it. We can see it in front of us. And what do we see? We see in the center, we see this number 5, right? And this number 5 seems to be so fundamental to humans, the 5 fingers. The fact that we got 5 fingers, the fact that our number squares are so organized that they all add up to 1. And whichever way you break it down, they come back to 6 as well. So you got the 1 plus the 9, which is 10, plus the 5 in the middle's always going to be 15. And whichever way you take it, it adds up to 15. Whether you go from right to left or diagonally or top to bottom, and you add up the numbers in a line, you're always going to end up with the same concept, which is really interesting. And it shows the polarities between numbers, 2 and 8, 6 and 4. 5 is that engine of movement. 6 is the harmony of adapting to the change to bring harmony. 4 is the structure that doesn't adapt, right? 2 is that fundamental sensitivity of the enneagram of empathy and tuning in to unconscious forces. 8, Saturn, is that practical, putting out that practical energy into the physical world to master my physical world, using my spiritual knowledge to overcome it. 3 is the expansiveness of Jupiter, expanding out the joviality. 7 is that going inwards deep into oneself, to gain some sense of inner perspective. And 9 represents like the completion and the action. 1 is the conception. 1 represents the first idea, the beginning. So you can see how there's this set of polarities dancing around the number 5, but it all comes back to 6. And so when we look at this this elemental table here, we can see why 6 after the point is so an important number, and it relates to the cubic structure, right? The 6 faces of the cube. And so we can see here that the number 7 is being outlined, the number 9 and the number 6. And 6 is always in the middle. I suppose this takes us to the concept of 369, doesn't it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, at first, when you brought up that graph, that the image there, the 7 and the 9, like you said, is 16, which makes a 7. No, can you pull up the gold one a second?
Yeah, man. I thought you meant the other one.
No,
Here we go.
The gold. So yeah, 7 and 9 equals 16, which together makes a 7. And I looked up what the 7th letter of the alphabet was, and it's the letter P. And sometimes people call money P money. So I just find that interesting that there's a link there to the numerology and why people say P. I don't know why they do. Maybe it stands for paper, but the letter P is the 7th letter, and 7 and 9 equals 16, which is a 7. So
are you sure it's not G?
16th letter.
16th. Sorry, I thought you said 7th. Right. Yeah,
no,
16th.
Yeah, no, I did. I'm getting myself confused. But yeah, these are the sort of threads I go down. It's like Oh, I'll add a 7 and 9. That's 16. What's the 16th letter? It's P. Like, oh, I'll see if there's something there. And yeah, P money. So I find that interesting. Obviously, you add them both together. 16 is a 7 as well, which is G. Stands for gold, obviously. So yeah, I've drawn a little graph here, which I'd like to show, because I think it'd be quite simple. It's probably easier if I show this, because it's quite difficult to explain without drawing it really. So, oh, there we go. So this is the pyramid here. On this, so this side you have you have gold at the top, you have oil here, and you have drugs on this side. On the dollar bill, that is the god in which they trust: gold, oil, and drugs. So gold is at the top. The gold would be the Ak, which means I, and then it's very similar to Ankh, which is the symbol for life, which in Egyptian hieroglyphs is shown coming down from the sun, because the Ak, the I, is life, the gold is life. And then the oil is relating to energy. So this would be kind of, I guess, the more masculine, like the fire energy, the car, the life force. We drive around in cars. And on this side would be the drugs, the D, the drugs relating to the body. I guess would relate to the mind also as well, but for the sake of this graph, let's say drugs relate to more the body, because you know, in all essence, they do affect our bodies a lot. So the body relate to water, the fire relate to energy. You have the bow, the container, which is the arc, and on this side you have the fire, the arrow. So you have the masculine arrow, the bow of the feminine, and then you have the eye observer in the center, the central point. So this is like the pin. The arc is the pin, and these two are the spin. You know, you have the electric magnetic spin, and this is vortex energy, and it shows it on the dollar bill with the I at the top and saying, "In God we trust, he'll be so pleased with our plans," because they're letting us know that we're creating with our money, our Mon E1 energy, we're bringing things into this realm. So yeah, the 3, 6, and 9 there. I'll show this again quickly. This side would be the 3, which is to see patterns, pitter patter. The fire, the light, the life force comes down, like it comes down from the sun, pitter patter, like rain. Also, the number 3, zinc, is number 30, which I find interesting, because if you have low sperm count, that's usually related to if you're depleted in zinc. So you have zinc on this side, the 3, the fire, the life force, and then this side you have the 6, which is relating to the body, or the body. Or the kind of barrier, the womb, the container, the vessel in which the sperm comes in, comes down, goes into. We're in a womb, and the light, the fire, comes down into this container in which we're in. So it comes down, goes into the womb, and then the central point, the I, the observer, would be the child, the imagination. It's us. We're a mix of the pater and the matter, the mother and the father, and yeah, we're the observers. And this is the target here. This is the central point, which is key. And in Egypt philosophy, they believed that you had to have a balance of the ka, the vital essence, the life force, the spirit, and the ba, which is our soul or our identity, which is related to water, because water is related to intuition and the depth. So you have to have a balance of the ka, the ba, and the ak to basically vortex out of here, which is what I think they were saying. Because vortexes bring things in, vortexes take things out, and then when we do pass on, I think we have to have a balance of this energy, and this is why there's so much disorientation with where we've come from, where we're going, where we are now, identity crisis, a lot of cult-like behavior, so people are kind of going down paths they wouldn't usually. People have strayed very far from the path, no intuition, lack of mentors for young people. So this here, there's so much to add to this as well. It's a framework which has really helped me understand where we're at, really. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely little drawing, and you know what you can do is you can take photos of it with your phone, and then you can share it in and you'll be able to see it better.
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll do
photo.
Yeah, I'll do a few, because it's difficult to pack everything into one image, because it would just be chaos. But the 3, 6, and 9, there's so much to add with that. So I think, yeah, it's a good idea. I'll take photos of different aspects of that. And yeah, good advice.
Yeah, I've learned to use the simple. I mean, you must have the equivalent of paint on your, the simple thing that to use on the Mac, and I've learned to do it digitally when I draw something, which isn't, but like it's from thumbnails, because I've been practicing these thumbnails, starting to get a handle on them. But that is really, really fascinating how the Trinity comes to being, and that 369 is rather sort of the key. I mean, if you want to get right down to it,
I've just got one more image there really quickly.
Yeah.
This, because I was pondering on why trees are called trees, and I was thinking tree, Trinity, there has to be some 3 to do with a tree. And I thought, okay, you have the seed, which is buried in the dark, but then the seed, which is our pineal, the egg, to grow it needs fire, it needs light, and it needs water. So you have the seed, which is the I, which is the pure potential of the imagination, and then it needs water, and then it needs light, and then that's the Trinity. That's the 3, 6, and 9. The 3 of the fire, the 6 of the water, and the 9 is the Pluto, the hidden, subconscious, the unconscious, pure potential that grows, and that's the Trinity. It's my drawing there. That's supposed to be a seed in a lotus position, because the seed relates to our identity, like or like our name or our wisdom within, and then lotus. So lotus means Ren, and Ren means name, and I just find that quite interesting. That obviously the lotus opens up like a flower. So yeah.
When I think about it, I think about the idea of lotus. It makes me think about the Hindi word loti. And the loti is one of the sacred things that, if you practice Shiva Bhakti in Vedic India, you will have your sat, which is what the sadhu use, right? Your divine tools. And you would have your loti. You must have your loti. And you must have your daspani. And you must have your mala. And your mala is your seeds that you wear. And your daspani is your sacred handling of the fire implements, because you have to handle the fire. You're working with fire, Agni, fire element. and your water is sacred, you got to use a special little loti that you carry your water in. That's your little brass container for your water, or copper or brass. So I've got I've got my little loti, you could say. But it's really interesting when you sort of like look at the 369 and how applicable it is. Like when you look at the numerology behind the 369, it gets rather interesting. And there are a few places where you can look at the numerology and understand them better than if you look at it on the proverbial enneagram, right? Because, and I don't mean the new enneagram that was invented in the 60s and the 50s, because the numerology is not quite in alignment with the old numerology. They've changed it, and I think it's part of a psyop, to be honest. Just when I start to look at the individuals involved in it and how it came to be, I actually did a video about that. You can find it. It's the enneagram deception. But regardless, when you sort of look at the numbers and you consider them just as they are, right? To me, it's really interesting, because let me pull up an enneagram. Let's pull one up here. Okay, so it's coming. StreamYard, are you giving us an enneagram? There we go. So, like, if you look at the number 3, right? So 3 is numerologically related to Jupiter, right? So we're talking about Zeus, right? We're talking about Zeus specifically. And Zeus represents the triangle, and represents the Trinity, and represents the expansiveness of consciousness, that expanding principle of consciousness. And that expanding principle of consciousness is related to the number 9, which is Mars. And Mars is about humanitarianism, about dedication, discipline to action. So Mars is about translating ideas, concepts, feelings, passion into action. And 3 is about the idea that expands. Now 6 is Venus. Venus is a gateway to the mysteries. So this is about that inner conceptualization of that idea that is expanded, so that it can be producing a harmony between the unmanifest number 3 as a concept and the manifestation of 9, which is fulfilling the end of a cycle, to move back to the origin, so that we can start the cycle again with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. And 6 becomes the pivot around where everything sort of revolves. And so we're talking about, harmony. This is why Libra represents the scales, because the scales of Libra keep it intact. And so 6 is about the process, right? The process of balancing these two impulses. There's an impulse, which is a mental impulse of an idea, which is going to become a concept. And then there's the impulse to act, to make a choice, cause and effect, and produce a cause to manifest a cause that produces an effect directly. And 6 then becomes that process. So you can see, like, the process of 6 and the masculine element is Libra. It's the scales. But Libra, number 6, Venus, also rules Taurus, which is a tauric field. So the tauric field, the feminine aspect of Venus, is that tauric field, the process whereby thought is becoming matter. Number 9 represents the matter. Number 3 represents the thought. So you can see thought becoming matter, and 6. So hence a hexagram is sort of used most in magical knowledge and rites, because to create a hex is to become attuned to the process, the relationship between the mental and the physical. And so that 369 represents that relationship between an idea going through a process to become matter, idea going through a process to become matter, and it turns this wheel. So, and that's rather interesting when you consider it, because then you've got obviously 3 plus 6 plus 9, which becomes 18. And so when you add them all together, what do you end up with? You end up with the next line of beginning, which is 1, and you realize that 8. And 8 is that sort of is about perfecting this manifestational round. And so when we're bringing 18 then represents the next round of 9, but we're bringing Saturn into it. And then the next cycle, right? We've got 27, right? The 2 and the 7 representing the empath and the energy of taking into ourselves. And the 7 is that going in towards understanding what's been going on. So the empathy is about sublimating, going into the subconscious, getting information. The mystic is about understanding that information, contemplating it and making sense out of it. And the next cycle through that, we then have 36. And 36 is about that embodying that mental idea, wisdom, and putting it into a state of harmony, harmonizing that concept, right? And then we go to the next octave, which becomes 45, which is also all acting on 9. And so you then are dealing with the concrete matter of structure 4 that is in a state of motion. So 45 then becomes the realm towards completeness, right? Where the 4 has built the matter structure, 5 is bringing the movement back to it, and then the 6, the 7, the 8 are the refinement of this process, and the 9 is the end of the process that becomes the beginning of the next process. So you can see this polarization here between 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, 6, 7, 8 working together, with 9 being the point where they meet. On one hand. On another hand, 5 sits in the middle. And then you got 1 plus 9, which is 1, 2 plus 8, which is 1, 3 plus 7, which is 1, 4 plus 6, which is 1. So there's 2 ways of decoding this enneagram, finding the feminine path and the masculine path of the way these numbers sort of integrate. But 369 becomes that sort of standard of the process of coming into matter. And these other 4 represent what you can speak of as, like in the Kabbalah, we speak of Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Isia. So Isia is the number 4 and number 6 working together, right? Yetzirah is number 3 and number 7 working together, the mental plane, right? Bria is number 2 and number 8 working together. This is like the deep emotional plane, right? The emotional currents from number 2 being structured by 8. And Atzilut is the origin, the 1 working with the 9 that contains the seed for all things, you know, that the fundamental state of being. So it's just very interesting when we see how all these numbers play out, and how 3, 6, and 9 play these important integral sort of places, or hold these important integral stations on the enneagram. And I think this is why lesser mystics in old times created this other image of, like, if you put into, you know, enneagram, it's sort of like how can I put it? It's like a baby enneagram to me when I look at this, right? Because it's sort of trying to exoterically express something that's esoteric. Does that make sense when I say that? It's trying to make obvious this connection between the 3, the 6, and the 9, right? And so it's like they've gone out of their way. Yeah, this one. They've gone out of their way to make it so obvious. Why is it not sharing there? They've gone out of their way to try and make it so obvious that, like, even somebody who doesn't know anything about mysticism or the occult or spiritual sciences should be able to see the relevance of 6 and 9. The problem is that they've left this open here between the 4 and the 5, which then creates its own sort of set of dissidences, because now we are no longer operating within the origin. We are no longer bringing the origin into the picture. All things need to be connected to the origin. Otherwise, the divine feminine is lost. And here they've locked the divine feminine in between 3, 6, and 9, and they've excluded all the other numbers from the divine feminine, which doesn't make any sense, because all of the numbers are an expression of the divine feminine. So the moment you do that, you create this sort of issue between 4 and 5, which is what we can see, I suppose, if you look at the way that we conceptualize things. But when you look at like the deepest mysteries of numerology, and numbers are like a fundamental way of understanding the way these things work, we can conceptualize that, there's a reason why we say 3 times lucky, right? The reason why we say if you want to create, you have to have 6 with your girlfriend, right? You have to have 6 with your girlfriend if you want to create a new life. And there's a reason we say the femma 9, right? The femma 9. Because all nine numerations are an expression of the feminine. Even though they are masculine actions, they are all expressions of the feminine. So that origin's got to be sort of... So it's these numbers hold keys to the whole universe, and language has essentially emitted from this. And there was something else you mentioned. But I'll catch up with it just now. I can see you writing down, so I take it I've triggered a couple of ideas in you, have I?
Yeah, as always, I've been scribbling away. Yeah, just I've been writing a few notes, which I'll get to in a minute. But with 3, 6, and 9, especially with 9 and like etymology, 9 in German means no, and then it's just really interesting that the 9 it signals to me like gnosis, like the eye at the top of the pyramid. And then also if you say 9 like with a bit of a twang, like 9, it kind of sounds like knowing as well, like knowing 9. And I just find that interesting that obviously the 9th letter is I, the letter I, and the I is at the top of the pyramid. So yeah, and also the number 6 is like fixed, which is matter, and then 3 is to see, which is light. But yeah, it's very interesting with the other Enneagram, where the 4 and the 5 is kind of split. They're not connected, because the number 4 is the feeling side, right? And then the number 5 is the thinking. So Enki's number, for example, is 40, and he's the goddess of creation, water, the earth, and like, so matter, which is like feeling, stuff we can touch, water, emotion. And then the number 5, 50, is related to Enlil, which is to do with the air, the mind, the thinking. And right now we're in between the thinking and the feeling, the heart and the mind. There's a sort of a separation of that. And the Hopis had a prophecy that the transition from the 4th world to the 5th world predicts a period of significant global change and destruction, followed by a new era of peace and harmony. The 4th world is characterized by social and spiritual corruption. So that would be the age of Pisces, potentially, which is water, I guess, more feeling. But obviously, there's been a lot of spiritual corruption. And their prophecy was that this would be marked by natural disasters, war, and stuff. Obviously, war isn't natural. And celestial signs as well. So 3i Atlas 2 turned blue not too long ago. I don't know if it's still blue or not, or if that's even true, but the signal out there is that this light or this star comet is turning blue. And in the Hopi's prophecy of the new age, they mention a blue star, and I can't remember what it's called, but this is very interesting because I've been feeling for a long time that we're at a crossroads of a crossroads of a crossroads. We've just come from one millennium to another. The year 2000, 2012 was supposed to be the end of the world, the end of the Mayan calendar. Now we're going from one age to another age, whether we've been in Aquarius for a while or just kind of transitioning into it. It would seem so. And
Kachina.
Yes, that's what the star was called. Yeah. So I find it interesting that they have this prophecy of a blue star. Right now we have 3i Atlas, which is 3 eyes are 999, which is either an emergency or something emerging from the sea. What is the sea? So the sea is up there, what's in space, the waters above, but also the sea is the waters below, which would be in the earth. And there's talk of Leviathan waking up and lots of naval activity in South America, but also the sea is within us too. It's our subconscious mind. So for me, this 3i Atlas signals third eye at last. And this third eye, you can see it on the dollar bill. This third eye is something that the powers that be have been trying to create, which is artificial intelligence, the artificial eye. But also this eye is within us as well. It's our third eye. It's our central point, that the arc, the anchor, the target. So there's a lot going on here with people being divided between the heart and the mind, the water or the fire, you know. Yeah, I heard that Blue Atlas turned blue recently, and then I saw that there was a blue star which would signal the coming of a new age. And then we have talk of the end times, the apocalypse, revelations. Yeah, possibly, Katrina. Could it be one of the variable stars? Potentially. I mean, with this 3i Atlas, unless I can perceive things with my own eyes, I always just go with the essence. So if there's something up there or not, I mean, I don't know. There's some really dodgy images being shared, like very blurry images of it. We're told it could be a hostile craft. It seems that any time there's a sort of mass awakening or a growth in spiritual awareness, like the year 2000, I think a lot of people were becoming more aware then. They certainly did after 2001 and what happened. 2012, I've heard that's a key date for lots of people coming online. 2021 was another key year, especially for me as well, and what happened in 2020. And then now, this 3i Atlas, there's a lot of fear. And I just, you know, alien invasion, comet, it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that for me, it's signaling third eye at last, which is a polarity of our third eye, or so the ancient intelligence or the artificial intelligence. This is the feeling, the intuition, and the thinking, the knowledge. And there seems to be a suppression of the feelings, suppression of the water, suppression of the emotions, or not even suppression. People's emotions are being played with. Like people who are becoming more empathetic, and people who are having a lot more empathy, they're being manipulated, and you know, and at the same time, people with a lot of empathy are being manipulated. Then on the opposite side, people's anger's being manipulated too. There's kind of a distortion. And then the tale of Narcissus has helped me understand what's going on, which I'll let you talk for a bit, and then maybe I can mention the myth of Narcissus and how it kind of relates to our reality right now.
Yeah, I think this whole idea of the Kachina, and it's funny because Kat arrived, and I was like, "Is the name Kachin? Katrin?" And I was like, "Oh, it's her." And I was thinking it was because I read her name that my brain was trying to figure this out.
And we put the Kachina in here as well.
Yeah. It's very interesting when they speak about the fourth world, because it makes me think about Steiner, and Steiner speaks about that we're in the fifth world. Now, these cycles repeat themselves. I wonder, and I'm just going to push this boat out there. I mean, this is just a highly speculative shooting at the stars concept, but sometimes it's good to shoot at the stars. Is the idea that there was some kind of a catastrophe. There was this great comet that passed through the heavens. What was it, 1700s, right? And then following that, we've got all of these images of cities that are empty with nobody in them, and evidence of a mud flood that seemed to cover England, here in Cape Town. There is nowhere where I have been in the world that I have not seen evidence of a mud flood. So that in itself is rather interesting. I have yet to travel somewhere on Earth and not see seen evidence of that. So yeah, totally. So it's, to me, I'm thinking, I'm wondering whether this star signaled, this blue star of the Hopi story signaled this prophecy, right? And could that be why the colonials were so hell-bent on removing them, their culture? Did their culture represent some kind of a threat to us? Were there more of these stories, right, that were too dangerous for us to appreciate because of the way that time works in cycles, right? Because it makes me think, like, the fourth age, the fifth age, could this be the fifth cycle of man that has started because of a natural catastrophe that, like, caused severe, smashed off, and man has been because the story of the orphan trains, right? We've got a lot of, like, evidence of people being much bigger in the past. So were they, like, deliberately trying to engineer humans? Why did they have to remove all the bells? Why did they have to get all of this knowledge of Tartaria? Why did they have to get rid of it? What is the story behind having to get rid of all of this information? So it's interesting. So I wonder whether that whole story is maybe a prophecy that's happened already, but these things work in cycles. They would have to work in cycles. Maybe this is why they had to reinvent our history. Maybe this cycle keeps coming around more often than we would believe, because there was this blue star in heaven in Galileo during the time of Emmanuel's being a baby, that crossed the sky. So maybe this, and the word catastrophe, right? Catastrophe. So that means literally the destruction or strife of a star, doesn't it? Katas, I think, means star. Is that right? You should know, Kat. Your name, the root of your name is the word for star, isn't it? It must be. No, I have to go and look this up and make sure. Kata etymology star. I just have to double check this.
Well, strophe is too far from strobe, if you swap the P and the B, strobe will be strophe.
Yeah.
Like a strobe light.
But I remember disaster. Yes, it comes from the word Greek, meaning bad, and star, astron, right? Astro, astron, astrophe. Ah, so that's interesting. So, so it's like there's this catastrophe word that we have, which is the destruction of a star or bad star, like from the ancient Greek. Actually, it means bad star. So when they put those two together, so or threatening star or scary star. So the star comes around, and whenever the star comes around, there's some crazy thing happening. Like, what does Herod do? He wants to get rid of all the babies, right? So all the firstborn boys are they're being done, trying to get rid of certain bloodline, right? Trying to remove certain bloodlines, but not just a certain bloodline, trying to like break the entire bloodline somehow. I don't know. It's really interesting when we start to look at this, because to me it seems like we are definitely on the cusp of two ages right here. And I some part of me says this is like a cyclical thing that happens again and again, and we're sort of playing out in Groundhog Day. I don't know what you think of that, but you wanted to share something else as well, brother.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I've thought for a long time that we seem to be replaying or going over a similar story. Like, I feel that we've been here before in this kind of scenario. Like, perhaps it's what happened in Atlantis, where the emergence of the artificial, there was a kind of a battle between the thinking and the feeling. And I think that the AI, all this infrastructure and stuff, wouldn't necessarily be bad if we had a balance of knowledge and intuition. But clearly, for a long time, there's been so much done to humanity that there's been a void created inside us, and that it's been filled by this artificial, rather than us being whole, emitting lots of light, being connected to our gold or our god or source, and integrating it with this technology. We're not at that stage yet. And I've mentioned before, with Zervan meaning cosmic time, and then you have Ahriman and Ahura Mazda in the womb, and that the story goes that Ahriman forced his way out of the womb. Well, I can see that happening now, that there's something that's trying to force its way into either, I can't work out if it's into matter or out of matter, because it seems that the powers that be want to try and force their way out of this realm. And something that came to me the other day was that I think that what happens is that when we die, when we pass on, we have to tell a story. We have to have our identity. There's many different stories about this, but we have to have we have to know who we are. And I think that this is quite clever, because what I believe happens, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, and I might have strayed a little bit from what we were just talking about, but I'm sure we'll go back round, is that when we die, when we pass on, there's beings that latch themselves onto us that want to leave this realm. And I think that what happens is that when we meet our higher self, the guardian at the gates or whatever, we have to prove who we are to pass. And I think that what's happening with this digital identity crisis is that people have lost who they are. They're trying to work out who we are. We're all trying to work out who we are. So what happens is that there's other beings that latch themselves onto us, and they trick our higher self into thinking that they can pass the gates. and then if we don't have our identity, we have to loop back round. And I want to try and get back around to what we were originally talking about, because I went off on a tangent there. But this blue star relating to Emmanuel, you say, I find that really interesting, because next year is a 10, which is 2026. There's obviously the Roman numeral for 10 is X, or a cross. And Christ died on a cross. There seems to be a huge shift in Christ consciousness. We're going from a 9 completion year snake, where we really need to sort of come into our intuition, because we're at a huge crossroads of humanity right now with this maybe new age. There seems to be a lot going on in all of the different realms. We seem to be at like a sort of like middle way, where there's things that want to come into this realm and things that want to go out. It seems to be a lot going on in the different realms. So also this is relating to the end times, or the end of time, and our perception of time. It's not that it's going to be the end of the world or a cataclysm. It's just our perception of time is going to be changed. And I think that this happens quite often. I'm not sure when the last time would be, but it's like, what a time to be alive. I mean, there's so much going on in the world. There's so much evil and stuff, but at the same time, there's so much magic as well. But the thing is, with the magic, it's more hidden. We're completely being like blasted all the time with all of everything that's bad, and it's it's quite difficult to navigate sometimes. But all of these signs of us going from a number 9 to a 10 year, which is obviously solar, and to do with the cross and a shift in consciousness, this 3-eye atlas turning blue, this Hopi prophecy, there seems to be a big transition, and that ties into transhumanism as well, because transhumanism is transhumanism. They want us to be in a trance because we're in a dream. And there's this phrase I heard, which is life is but a dream from which we all must wake before we dream again, which I love. And I think that there's a saying as well, or the nursery rhyme, row your boat gently down the stream. We're all on a stream, and it's up to, we can get caught up in the current stream, or we can kind of like tap into different streams of consciousness. I think that there's a lot of watery energy at the moment, and a lot of powerful things we can tap into. And I think that all these little signals, like I mentioned, with 3-eye atlas, the numerology, all the different things that are going on is very, very interesting.
Yeah, totally, brother. I would just add that it's interesting you mentioned like Emmanuel and the catastrophe, and I think they've played with the meanings of our word, because like you see the word kachina, I think it means purifying star, a purifier. And I think that when we see that blue star, it's a sign of a purification coming on the planet. And so we've got the Emmanuel and the sign of the star. And whenever we have the star, there's like some kind of a purification going to happen. Some purifications are challenging to observe and some are easy, But it's sort of like, if you want to purify yourself, you probably got to eat something that's disgusting, right? And eat this disgusting stuff, and then, or drink it, and then it purifies your body. Purifying things very rarely taste like honey. They're normally bitter. There's a bitter taste. Like wormwood is a purifier, for example. Like we see wormwood in the Bible, but that's wormwood is for getting parasites out of your body, brother. I just want to remind you that Esme is going to be pulling out her nails. Are you still going to Brighton? Yeah.
I don't think so. She's here. I don't think we're going anymore. So we've got.
I'm not too well.
Yeah, she's feeling a bit poorly. So I just asked her, you still up for going to Brighton? But because we've got but Bodhi finishes nursery in like 2 hours, and Brighton's a bit of a way away. So you know, it was a bit up in the air. So we've got time. But with what you were just mentioning there, I just want to say really
I hope she feels better. Much love.
Yeah, thank you. We're making a raw cacao at the moment, so
nice.
You know, full of antioxidants and stuff. So yeah, and it's also bitter as well, isn't it? Raw cacao. So yeah.
My boy has learned not to turn his. He will only drink his cacao bitter now. He doesn't want any sugar or honey in it. I'm really proud of him.
See, we had a little bit of raw honey, a little bit of cayenne pepper, because raw cacao, I can't remember what it is. It's an adaptogen. So if you add herbs to it, it kind of amplifies what the herbs do. So yeah, sometimes a little bit of Celtic sea salt as well. Yeah, what you were just talking about with I was just thinking of this talk of Leviathan waking up in the ocean as well, and also with all these kind of like sort of, there seems to be a lot of solar flares recently, a lot of solar activity this year. We're at, I think it's the 11th year of the solar cycle, which is the most powerful, because I think they come in 11-year cycles. And what's interesting is that with these solar flares, people get unwell or release things. They get colds or flus. And what can help with this is iodine is really good for helping with radiation, iodine. But also at the same time, perhaps we need to release stuff. We need to have a bit of cold and stuff like that. You know, we all have to release that kind of stuff. But what's interesting with this is that when people get unwell, it's kind of upgrades, I think, all this solar energy, this solar activity. That's why they want to block out the sun. They want to stop this. In 2020, there were loads of coronal mass ejections. At the same time, when there was lots of mass injection, there was loads of, because I heard it on the radio, coronal mass ejections.
That's hilarious.
Injections. So at the same time as we're being invited to like release all this stuff, get on well, like it's fine. Do you know what I mean? Have a cold, fever, flu, whatever. It's just your body releasing. They're injecting people with stuff which would suppress our consciousness, suppress our flow. And then that was in 2020. And it's happening now as well again. They're going to try and ramp up that stuff, especially with flu vaccines. I can't speak on 2012 because I can't remember that far, or the 2001. But when we have these this invitation from the cosmos to upgrade, it seems that they want to try and shut that down by pushing injections and stuff. Yeah.
Well, if you go backwards, the sun works on an 11-year cycle, right? So every 11 years it flips its poles. So every 11 years it gets back to its same point that it was at before, and so it gets more and less, more and less, more and less, right? And it gets more stable and more unstable. So if you go to like, you know, if you say like the peak, when did they want to put the little needles into arms, right? When was that time? The peak of that time was really 2022. Yeah. That was the time that they really wanted to, they had it ready and they were lining us up for shots, weren't they? Because through 2020 and 2021, they were developing and they were getting it right. By 2020, end of 2021, is my timeline right? People were getting like the shots on, but in 2022 it was being forced upon people, right? Now everybody had to get it. So in like the 2021, it wasn't available for everybody, and they were like apologizing. Sorry, we don't have enough. Like we only a few people can get it. 2022, it was like, okay, now it's a shoe on the other foot. You will get it or else, and you will get this booster, and you will get that, and you won't be able to work. You won't be able to do anything, right? If you haven't had this. So that if you go back 11 years, right, and then you're sitting on 2011, right? What happened in 2011? Let's go back to September. So, right, 2011, and let's go back to 2000. What was going on in 2000? There was this Y2K scare, wasn't there?
The
I can't hear you, brother.
The millennium, I can't say the word, the millennium bug. There was a big bug scare, you know. Yeah.
So they seem to have a program for us at that point every time. They got to keep us occupied because there's some reason to panic. Like, oh my gosh, all the clocks are going to zero, all the computers, everything's the world's going to stop. The next thing, it was like, oh, we've got to change everything. Terrorism, we've got to quickly upgrade. We need more wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We need lots of war happening. And then the next thing was like, okay, now the war is against you. So there seems to be a cycle running here. And then we can go back, and we can go back to 1989. What was happening in the late 80s? You know, in South Africa, it was like heavy apartheid coming to an end, right? So I wonder what was happening in other countries, but there was like big things happening here, like lots of fear, right? The fear was being generated in South Africa was that the people with dark skins were going to go out and unalive all the people with light skins. This was the propaganda that was being fed, you know, through the machine. And people were afraid, and they were jumping on airplanes to get out of South Africa because, oh, my skin is too light. I'm going to, like, my family's not safe. And so there seems to be a program, heavy program running. And if we go back from that, like 89 time, and we go back to 78, I wonder what was happening in 1978 globally. I don't know. There's probably a lot of interesting information we'll get if we look at those time frames and go back segment by segment, because it seems to be tuned into the sun. And it brings us back to the beginning of this conversation, you know, the gold, the element of gold. And yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I just want to mention that the current solar cycle started in 2019 and ends in 2030, which is significant because what happened at the end of 2019, which if you go on YouTube, search Event 201, it's an interesting video for people to go and watch. And right now, or the end of 2024, between 2024 2025, it's kind of it peaks. So it seems that there's a lot this solar energy they want to try and harness and try and create things, and at the same time, yeah, like Katrina rightly says, feeding off fear, which is false evidence appearing real, fear, which is a low vibration, a low frequency, whereas the opposite of is love. If you have a higher frequency, you're vibrating higher. In cymatics, there's a saying, if you amplify the frequency, the structure of the matter will change. So if we have a heightened frequency, our perception of reality will change. And then this is why there's a distortion. And I'll just mention the myth of Narcissus, because it's a kind of it's a story or a framework I'm kind of working with at the minute to understand what's going on. Is that if you look on YouTube, any videos, it won't mention Narcissus had a twin sister. But the real story of Narcissus goes that he had a twin sister who was killed, and he was looking in the pool of water. So, and then he saw his own reflection, and he was obsessed with his own reflection because he thought it was his twin sister. And on the sidelines, you have Echo, with air, AI, distorting the pool of water. So I'll break that down. Narcissus would be the conscious mind. His twin sister would be the subconscious mind, which has been cast out. The chaos, the dark, the negative, don't go there. Don't cross the rivers in your own mind. Just be conscious, just follow the light. And then Narcissus, void of the subconscious, just with the conscious mind, looking into the pool of water, which you could view as technology, or like a mobile phone, which has a blue light which pulls, which can transfix us, like he was transfixed with his own reflection. And what AI is doing is distorting the matter, distorting our perception of reality by echoing back to us what we want to hear, you know, because it's just a reflection, but it's a distorted reflection. It's not really, it's not our true reflection. So I just found that quite interesting. If you look at Echo as AI, and then Narcissus and his twin as, you know, there should be a union, really. And what's happened is we've been separated from our subconscious or our higher self, you know, because the light is found in the dark, and that's where our gold is. It's in the dark. It's in the subconscious. It's hidden, and we've kind of been detached from that. So yeah, I think mythology and myths, the word myth we've been told is, oh, that's not real, it's just a myth. But really it's the story of us. It's our archetypal energy. And I think to understand the current timeline that we're in, myths really help with that, because they connect the past, the present, and the future. Really, you know, the mystery, the mythologies, our theology, our understanding of our connection to source.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, this brings us back to the beginning, the 369, when we were talking about tree, the number 3. And the number 3 represents the tree. That's why the word tree and 3 are the same. And then we've got mystery, like the female tree. And then we've got history, right? The masculine tree. History is about like documenting the past so we can control the future. Mystery is about understanding the past so we can transform in the future. It's more about transform who we are, where history is about transforming the world in the future, you know, in our own image, so to speak. So it's quite interesting, this tree, and the tree represents polarity brought into union, the triangle, right? You got your two forces, and they common ground. They can find common ground in the third point if they're vectored towards that point. Because what happens then is, if the angle is right, they merge and they become a single force, right? So when 2 becomes 1, we have a triangle, and 2 becomes 1, and they meet at that point, and that, I think that point represents merging, where they are now, a new vector has been reached or created. And when we look at myth, which is really quite interesting, like, I don't like that word myth, just because of the connotations that we've loaded it with. Much of our so-called mythology, I think, is like very much history, but it's a way for historians to say, oh, that's not real, it's just a myth. You know, I don't like that, because like, who's to say myth's not real? And when we look at the mythos, you know, like, it's all about the heavens, it's all about the stars, right? So everything comes back down to the stars. And in our most ancient myths, I think we were talking about this in my group today and yesterday, weren't we, Kat? And Kat was sharing some lovely information about Aboriginal mythology, and they're equating to the stars. And I think this is like really quite poignant. Like, just how we've forgotten how so much of our words, our language, our ideas, our myths, our culture come from ideas related to the stars. And now we've been sort of taught to look at the world as if like, you know, it's a negative thing to be reaching for the stars, isn't it? Am I right or wrong these days? Like it's if you're told you're reaching for the stars, it's not really a very positive thing, is it? It's not seen as like a compliment. Someone says, "Oh, you're reaching for the stars, dude." Well, if you say someone's up in the stars, it's not a compliment. Where it ought to be, I think it ought to be a compliment. So we've really like changed a lot of our perception of the heavens and the stars, where before we considered them having a relation to the divine and the prophetic, and now it's become like a sort of like a he laughed behind my back. You're a complete and utter idiot, you know, because you're up in the stars. Ha ha ha! You don't know what's going on, you know. Where actually, if you think about it logically, if you're up high, you've got a bird's eye view. You're more likely to have a very good perspective of what's going on. Every military strategist wants a bird's eye view. That's why we build drones, right? So we can like look from the sky and see what's going on down below. And like any paramilitary organization, they will have their drones up first and get an idea of like what's down below and really want to see the whole map, the whole picture. You can't see that when you're on the ground. But when you relate the stars to the ground, you get that reflection. And then you can see the ground reflected in the stars, like from a mythos perspective. And so like all of these ideas, and, you know, there seems to be this insult that we insult all the beautiful things. Like, how's this one? To be told you're being self-conscious. It's an insult. But it's actually the most beautiful thing you can do. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm conscious of the self. I am being conscious of the self. I am going inward and I'm observing these forces that I call myself, and I'm gaining a foothold of perspective and understanding. No, you're being self-conscious. It's an insult, where it should be the biggest compliment of all. And I think there's so many of these little nuances in the English language that have become so sort of colloquialized, and I think it keeps us locked in. So when people then hear other people being called self-conscious, they don't want to be self-conscious. So it's almost like, no, you can't be conscious of the self. You must ignore the self. And the same for the stars, right? Like you don't want to be thought of as being up there in the stars. You don't want to think too freely, right? Because too freely thinking means that you're up there in the stars and you're lost and you're a laughing stock. So we need to sort of rethink our cultural dogmatic perspectives and how we've been conditioned by words, and how powerful these words are to shape our consciousness and to realign our perspectives and our ideologies, and produce sort of like a proverbial cage of words that we are stuck within, and not understanding when we're talking about a catastrophic event that we're talking really about the stars. And then in the same breath, someone will use the word catastrophic, not knowing where it comes from, and in the next breath say that astrology is not real, right? But it's like, well, did you hear the word you said 5 minutes ago, catastrophic? Well, that comes from astrology, right? Like people would look at the stars for signs and portents and go, oh, something big's happening on Earth. So that's very interesting, you know, this relationship between the heavens and the earth. And I think this comes back to our 369 conversation, right? The three, that mental. What are the stars? Okay, this is a big conversation, right? Like you're going to have the flat earthers. We're going to have the disc. We're on a round ball earthers. We're going to have the hollow cave earthers. We're in the hollow earth. We're going to have the inverted. We're on the inside of the earth, right? There are a lot of different ways of looking at this. But like, what do you think when you think of the stars? I think of living beings communicating with us. I don't know where you sit with that exactly.
Yeah, when I think of the stars, I think of plasma. Like we're told the sun is a gas giant. It's not. It's plasma. Plasma is ionized gas. It's conscious. The stars, yes, are living beings. They're conscious. They're frequencies. And they're frequencies that we can tune into. I view them as gods, which are also guides. The word gods sounds like guides, and I think they're one and the same. Gods can guide us, guardians of dimensions. The stars above are guardians of dimensions. You have Saturn, time, the fourth dimension, and you have the other planets also as well. And then you have the different layers of I don't know what they're called, but different layers of certain planets. You have obviously Pluto on the outside. Do you know what I mean? There's three different layers of the planets, and I think that in between these layers there's water, and we cross the barrier of water when we're dreaming. Our soul travels to these different dimensions when we're dreaming. But when we're just having a conversation, we can be dreaming. The dimensions is to have multiple perceptions of reality. Ment ion. Ment is mind. Di is to multiply or to change perception or color. So dimensions are just to change our perception. And when we tap into these beings, we can do that. And they're frequencies which are in water. Because if you have water and then a frequency, it creates light. In the beginning was the water, and then was the frequency, or the word, or the weird, the fate, and then that creates something that we can perceive. So we have the pure water, the chaos all around us, and then we have the frequency which we can tap into, the thoughts that we kind of collect, and then we can turn that into light, like abracadabra. I create as I speak. As I speak, I create. Our teeth are energy centers, and we emit a lot of light from our mouth, hence why they were covered up recently. And also we emit a lot of light from our reproductive organs too. We create from there, we create life, and we also create from our mouth here. So that's a trinity of the water. So yes, you have the water, and then you have a frequency which creates the vibration, which is something that we can see, which is light. And then 100%, the stars above are it's like the light which is inside us, like our DNA is also light in water, which I don't know too much about plasma, but I'm pretty sure that that's to do with a plasma, or the water that covers our DNA or our cells or whatever. It has to be coherent. You have four-phase water, which is more structured water, which looks like a hexagram. And when water behaves like that, then it behaves differently. We bring life in through via plasma, the place of the Ma. So 100%, they're beings up there. That's why they're seen as gods, the planets and gods. And I think that our perception of them has been warped, though. Like, I'll use Saturn as an example. People say Saturn is Satan. Kronos, old father time. We've been made to fear the gods, and because they don't want us in multiple dimensions. They don't want us accessing multiple dimensions. They want us in one reality, one density, one ring to rule them all, stuck in a loop. And I think that we can break through these different barriers, which is water, like barrier. And I think our bar goes through these barriers. And but 100%, there's very powerful energies that we can tap into if we sort of connect to these beings, to these gods, which are guardians at the gates of these different dimensions. And with COVID, C. Ovid, his tale Metamorphosis, which is about angering the gods. There's a lot going on which is angering the gods, angering the guardians of dimension. So we're separated, we're isolated, but at the same time, there are people, the powers that be, tapping into the energy of these gods. And what they give us is stars, like in Hollywood, these stars which they can manipulate and control, and people look up to them and worship them like their gods. And they don't look up beyond that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to that. I just want to show you guys something. You mentioned plasma, and Kat's shared something about some of the newer ideas that are shared by some of the geophysicists, and it's a new idea, so it's obviously still French. So let's put it up here, and I just had to share it because I love it. I love it when I catch them in the act. These evil, blooming, I don't want to say bad words, bastards. I love when I catch them in the act. So there we go, right? Are you enjoying the show so far? Well, let's see what the other show was. What was my history? So, okay. So this was what I first shared, right? So you ask Google plasma in Earth's core, and you get this answer, right? There is no plasma in Earth's core. It is solid metallic ball of iron, and there is nickel despite being hot enough to melt due to immense pressure. The outer core, however, is a liquid metal that generates Earth's magnetic field through convection, while plasma is found in the magnetosphere and ionosphere above the surface. Okay, so they're telling us it's in the sky. But then when you change your search term just a little bit, right, then Google AI comes clean. Well, actually, the idea that the Earth's inner core might be plasma behaving as a solid is a concept discussed by some geophysicists. You've just got to love. You've just got to love the bloody gump of this AI machine to tell you an absolute fact in one hand, and then while actually, there are scientists that are discussing this. It's not a consensus idea yet or at the moment, but like it's being discussed. And I think this is quite like poignant, when we're talking about plasma, because just exactly what plasma is. And it's quite an interesting substance. Like, I think when we're talking about plasma, we're talking about like the most etheric substances there is, right? And yeah, like interesting, blood plasma. And I've always been fascinated by the concept of blood plasma. The fact that it's a translation, the blood is a translation, a medium through which life and consciousness can come into the body. It's quite, for me, it's quite a thought. And then we talk about blood plasma. Just exactly what is this blood plasma? And they'll tell us, no, well, they've got a lovely little answer for it. But these I don't think the word blood plasma is a very modern word. I think maybe it's an old word, right? It's been used for a while. And maybe it was used in a slightly different context to what it's being used now, because our science has been so bombastically like crunched into a cube. And we're not allowed to think outside of the box, right? We have to think in this little cubic box that they've given to us. This is where you're allowed to think. This is the limits of your yeah, the only hole in the body that gets closed, the star. That is interesting as well. And that life force and that belly button, I think there's something quite in this. We're talking about plasma as being like a gateway, maybe, between the physical and the non-physical, right? Matter and antimatter, the other side here. And there's sort of a metaphor with, you know, the navel hole in the body being a gateway between, you know, life and the other side. Basically, a woman's body is designed, and we first get everything that we need to be alive through our navel hole, right? And so we've got the navy, right? Like, what does the navy represent? Well, why is this word nav and navigate and the stars, you see, and plasma? And the idea that plasma could be in this inside the earth makes perfect sense to me, because the plasma could be a reflection of the waters above and the waters below. They've definitely, I think, lied to us about the model of the world we're living in, on, under, through, whatever. They've given us very clear ideas which just don't add up. Like the concept that there's a vacuum. Okay, so we're living in a pressurized world, right? And then there's a vacuum. But somehow the pressurized system, can you make a vacuum around a pressurized system and keep the pressurized system inside a vacuum? Can you actually do that? Like we just believe it. But when you think about it, does that actually make sense? Because there's all this pressure here, and then apparently here there's no pressure. So what do we know about things? Like pressure moves through gradients, right? So if you've got a vacuum, pressure is going to move through the gradient. This is the physics they've taught us. So when you apply the physics they've taught us to the idea that there's a vacuum around the earth, it doesn't make any sense. What if we're looking at space is a plasmic matrix of sorts? Like I think it's more likely like a womb, right? And it's more likely designed like our bodies are designed, that it's like a womb fluid matrix, and we just don't know what it is, so we call it a vacuum, because like you can't just go there, maybe because of, you know, the conditions aren't really we're not built to experience those conditions, and our tools for gathering information, like we're assuming that our tools are giving us like good information. I think that's a big assumption to make. Well, yeah, brother.
I think that the word vacuum, like being used to apply what is the womb or the water, is just a reflection of how we perceive reality, or how we've been conditioned to see reality. It's like water is this creative life force, like plasma, and they call it a vacuum, sucking all the magic out of it, literally, like nothing there. And that just trickles down in anything scientific to me, you know. So I look at it as like air, the mind, more of like the mental scientific view, and then water, the creation, the play, the imagining. It's like Age of Aquarius is both, you know, air sign, water bearer. But I mean, we're tricky territory, because there seems to be a lot more air, and then with a vacuum sucks the air out, so it's using air to pull stuff out. And I think that's the language there is very very profound. It's like, I just, in my mind's eye, I see them just sucking the fun out of reality.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's I think they want our consciousness to become like vacuums. Like what is a vacuum? It's like once you've sucked all the good stuff out of something, you've got a vacuum. And it sort of represents what these archonic beings are trying to do to humans, right? Like a vampire. They're trying to suck all of our spiritual potential and energy and consciousness out of us and use it in their little trading zoo, right, as currency. Because I think that in the 8th sphere, the currency is that, what we carry. And that currency is then used to build the 8th sphere and to maintain it, you know, like resources. And so they've got a resource-based economy, and we are the resource. And without us as their resource, they cannot continue to exist because they're being like, I think it's compacting, right? Because they don't generate resource, they just use resource. And so it's going to contract and contract and contract until it implodes and it's going to be gone. But they need to keep injecting something into it to keep it from contracting. And I think we are that resource, you know. So so it's quite interesting when we start to look at like the idea of a vacuum, and you vacuum up dust, right, as an idea. So this idea of plasma in the earth makes a lot of sense to me, because I've always thought that, like, you can't sell me this rubbish with like the earth being like, there's got to be something else going on in the earth, dude. Like, just rock in the middle now. I don't know. It seems like there's more going on, you know. And planets, I think, can maybe become suns or stars, right? Why not? Maybe if that plasma lights up, right, and starts emitting lots of energy, then you'd become a shining light, wouldn't you? And so it's sort of like that plasma in our blood. Is that like from a time when we were light beings? An interesting concept. Yeah. And what we call the plasma in our blood is a residue from when we were energetic beings.
Interesting.
And what is the difference in mass when we're no longer alive? That 1 ounce, 50 grams that leaves the body. What is that? Plasma has mass, right? I've never really considered that.
Is it 50 grams? I've heard 21 grams before.
Oh, it's different from different people.
Okay, yeah, of course.
I think it can be up to, you're right, I think it's more commonly around about 1 ounce. And it can be 21. I think an atheist is 21 grams, right?
Well,
atheists is 21 grams. People that have like real conviction and spiritual values, there might be like 50 grams.
So the reason why I 21 grams is stuck in my head is because I've seen it before, and I was like, okay, I quite like the fact it's 21 grams, because we had event 201, with COVID, which was all about to do with our soul as well. Yeah, the destruction of our identity. If we're talking about the bar, which is 21, B and A is 21, that's relating to the soul, which is our identity. And then event 201 was all about pushing occult-like behavior and extracting our identity, which is our soul. So who knows whether it's 21, 50 grams, but I've always thought it's interesting that it could be 21 grams, our soul. And you were mentioning the 8th sphere earlier. Whenever I hear that, I always think 8 Sophia, wisdom, and I think that that's what these beings thrive on, is wisdom. And I think that's why not many people have wisdom, because it's buried inside us, our gold, our spark, that is our igneous, our flame, that is our inner wisdom. And I think that that's inside everyone, that I think it's being extracted. That's why people aren't able to use it, because it's being used by other beings, potentially. And also Meta and Neuralink's logos are number 8 as well. And those are the main two which seem to want to try to bring this 8th sphere here. And it would also seem as well that the powers that be want to try and break this 8th sphere so they can get through. I think that's how they believe they can exit this realm, because they like I mentioned earlier, with them latching themselves onto us when we leave this reality to go to the next place, that I think they have to kind of hijack our soul or our consciousness, that they themselves can't exit on their own. This is why they're trying to pierce reality, which I'm not sure if they've done. This is what this artificial is. It's like, it's a leak. It's a mind virus. Like the all is mind, all is spirit. There seems to be a virus, and perhaps it's been here for a while, and perhaps it left, but now it seems that there is 100% a mind virus. I think some call it Watiko. It can also be named Ahriman, I guess, this virus. And I think that's why we're here at this time now, to come into this place, whatever it is, round, flat, a cube, simulation, a copy of the organic, whatever. We've come in here to try and decode this confusion that's happened over timelines, over time, and to try and I just view it as we've come here to try and fix this virus, which I view it as the story of the demiurge creating a false reality and stuff may well have happened. But what I see it happening now. So I see what's happened in our past as our future. So I view that the trajectory could be going on. Is there a false reality, inside this reality? And I think that we've come here to try and stop that, and we're from the future, and we've come back into the past to stop that timeline, which perhaps did happen in the past, maybe not, but I can just see all this stuff in our history of the fall of Atlantis, the demiurge creating a false reality. It's kind of like now, like this artificial, like trying to create a world within a world, which is all digital, kind of controlled, lifeless. That could be a future, and that could have happened in the past. And I think right now we have ability to stop that trajectory. And I think that that's perhaps why we're here, is to talk about this stuff and to sort of remember, like connect back to this dream world, to the waters above, beyond, the imagination, the realms which are the unseen realms which we can bring here into this place, because we're seeds, and we're here to grow and expand ourselves and each other and this place as well, because it's a womb, as you say, and we're here to grow. But there's kind of been a bit of a stagnation, but it's a lot of powerful energy that we can tap into, that is being tapped into by certain groups and elites and stuff. And I think to some people, some of the stuff we talk about, they'll be like, "Oh, you're nuts." But like, I'd rather be weird than insane, because to be weird is to cast your own fate. To be insane is to keep repeating, doing the same thing, expecting change. So I've grown into my weirdness, and the more and more you look into this stuff, the more and more weird it gets. And the more and more weird reality is getting, if you can see what is going on. So
yeah, it's interesting. The word weird comes from the etymology of the word weird, and like we've got the werewolf, and the word weird, I think it's onomatopoeic of whirling, and you think of a whirling dervish, and you think of a spinning thing, like a spinning world, and it's being whirled like a spiral. So I think the word for the etymology of weird is related to a spiral, is related to going inside this never-ending vortex that is really a toric field. That's what a spiral is, isn't it? And it emerges from its own, a phoenix from its own ashes, right? It goes through its own origins and comes back out again and gets bigger. So there's like this interesting concept of like the word, and then we've got the word, right? And the word is how we shape the word. And so the word is magical in context. And so we can use words as powerful tools to sculpt reality. And we can channel the word through the word. And, you know, so these spells are obviously being used to keep us in this little box. Like they want us in the box. Don't get out of your box. Makes me think of that little poem, Little Boxes, Little Boxes. You probably all heard it when you were kids, you know. It was a beautiful poem. Yeah, brother. I see we've been clocking in for a good 2 hours. I thought maybe let's get to the last few ideas that we've got.
Sure.
The last 15, 20. I don't know how much time you've got. Maybe the next 15, 20 minutes or whatever.
Sounds good. Yeah. Yeah. Katrina's mentioned Prometheus, and I would just bring to the table with Prometheus stealing fire from the gods, giving it to humanity. I'm not going to go too deep into that. It's just more of like how the fact that when he did that, he had his liver pecked out. And the way I view this is like, so we were talking about the car and the bar earlier, and it's interesting that the car is the spirit, and we go to a bar to drink spirits, and we open up ourselves we invite other entities in. I think with when we drink alcohol, it opens up our subconscious, and the subconscious comes to the front, you know. And then the puppet masters who are not us, unless we have a conscious and subconscious mind entwined as one. A lot of people haven't done that, and it is a process. But that's what happens is at the bar, you know, you kind of you open up your soul, right? And then afterwards you drive your car, but not very well. Your vital essence, your life force can be depleted. You know, that could be of regret, like, oh, what have I done? Whatever, you know. But the reason why I find this interesting is because alcohol destroys the liver. So with Prometheus taking fire from the gods, giving it to humanity, there's a lot of different concepts there. But I've always viewed kind of Prometheus as, you know, like Enki, sort of implanting our pineal or giving us the potential for that spark. But like, I think maybe it was hidden. You know, I haven't read a lot of books on that. I'm just going from intuition that there was this hidden spark in us, or hidden potential, and that this kind of myth of Prometheus seems to be a monomyth, because also you have Christ sort of igniting the spark in people, and you had Christ hung up on the cross. And you know, I don't really know what happened to Enki, but I presume it was probably the same. He was probably cast out of people's minds, like the true teaching of Christ have been cast out of people's mind, and that now we've sort of been cursed to peck out our own livers by drinking alcohol, to like filling this kind of void that's been created. Sent the message to the unbox. Franklin, I'm not sure if that message is for me. That says sent message to the unbox or inbox, but I can't see one. So yeah, anyway, I think that's really interesting, and I'd love to hear that your thoughts on that story of Prometheus sometime, Katrina. But I think that if we follow the language and the etymology, like the bar, the BA in Egypt is our identity or our soul, and then it's no coincidence that where we go to drink alcohol, like create a hole or a chasm with source, it opens us up to that. We do that at the bar, and there's no coincidence there. Why is it called a bar? There's so many ways with that as well. So the bar is a barrier. Okay, so the bar is a barrier. The bar is I'm talking about the human-headed bird in Egypt, which travels between realms. When we're dreaming, it goes to different realities, or the astral plane. It crosses a bar. It crosses a barrier, which is water. Water is a barrier that we need to cross with our imagination. That is the barrier that we cross when we die. That is probably the firmament. It's waters above. But it's only our perception that creates the barrier of perception. So there's a barrier of water, but we get past it from changing our perception by not having a firmer mind, but having an expanded mind, expandedment. And I think that what happens with that, with the dreaming, the opposite to that is filling the bar, or filling our soul with alcohol, which in turn destroys our liver, or can do. And that what seems to be pushing this alcohol is the ego. So you have the ego, the empire, pushing alcohol, and there are some people that don't drink alcohol. So I think in Islam they don't drink alcohol, and I think that it's like the ego is attacking that. What's that?
People like me. I don't drink alcohol.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe once in like 2 years, I'll have like one ale, but never get tipsy.
Yeah, so I'm very good at drinking alcohol, so that's why I don't. I haven't drunk alcohol in about a year because I'm really so good at drinking it. I'll drink it all night, and then like a lot of the next morning, like if I'm out, because I don't have just one or two drinks. I like drinking, so that's why I don't. But at the same time, is the opposite of I've been able to connect to, I guess, my identity more by not drinking alcohol, by connecting to my bar rather than standing at the bar and giving my identity away. This is why they want everyone to be carry on drinking alcohol. This is why there's this push for everyone to keep drinking alcohol, because this is giving our identity away. I mean, it's like the identity is, I guess, maybe the black sun, or inwards. Once we go there and when we unlock that, it's quite hard for people to push fear on you. But when you're not connected to your identity, when you're always looking outwards, it's easier to buy into narratives and other people's stories, because our soul, our identity is our story. It's our store of energy. It's our gold. And I think that when we tap into that, it creates a barrier around us, which is harder for outside forces to enter.
Yeah, exactly. The idea of the bar. Like we used to use bars to bar our doors so wild animals couldn't come into our homes. And if somebody behaved bad, we'd put them inside a room and put bars on the windows and bars on the door, right? So like the bars are like separating, it's a cage. Like it's a cage, really. It's what we do. Yeah, the bar. So the bars, right? Society has bars on the cage, and the cage of society's bars are full of spirits and beer and wine. And so the spirits, the beer, and the wine help keep the bars of the cage active, and they like to fill the bars up with people, prisoners. And the way that they enslave our minds, like me, I'm very good at smoking cannabis. I'm an expert. This is why I'm not smoking cannabis. I'm just too good at it. When you're this good at something, you should do something else. Because do something you're not good at. Learn to do new things. You know. I got really good at cannabis, especially when I started growing cannabis. I noticed that I was really good at growing cannabis because when you're good at smoking cannabis, you tend to get good at growing cannabis. So I got so good at growing cannabis, but I'm not very good at selling cannabis. In fact, I've never sold cannabis in my life. So like what I grow, I would smoke, and so it's got ridiculous. You know, there's only so many pounds you should consume in a year. So I don't use any. But I think like all of these substances are used as bars on our cage. You know, at least the THC. Do you want to know something interesting? Just talking about the bars on the cage, MK Ultra, yeah, they encourage the people that have taken the mind control to use alcohol. You're encouraged to use alcohol, cocaine, amphetamines, fine. They're not encouraged to use psychedelics. They're discouraged from using psychedelics, and they are completely banned from using cannabis. Because cannabis is the one thing that it deconditions you. Yeah. It sort of brainwashes you of all of the brainwashing. And it's very hard to program somebody when they're on cannabis. I don't know if you know that. Like try hypnotize someone when they're stoned. It's like, oh, sorry, what were you doing? Like, look at this silver thing. Yeah. Wow. Look at that. Wow. You know, like they wouldn't be able to hypnotize you because you wouldn't be concentrating on what they want you to concentrate on for long enough for them to hypnotize you, because your mind's just wandering. Like, so it means that your mind is sort of free. But, you know, the consequences of smoking and putting substances in the body pollutes the body. And I think they want us to pollute our bodies with substances. And if it's not going to be those harsh, dangerous things that I've mentioned, like H or, you know, Charlie, or that it's going to be pharmaceuticals, right? Pain pills or psychological reconditioning pills, or pills for allergies, right? Or weed, or, you know, they want everybody on something. And this is why they've I don't know if you're aware of this. They've changed weed. Yeah, they've changed the plants significantly, and they've got this legal stuff. Like in the UK, there's legal weed, right? You're aware of this, right? It's
What's
not
that?
the same THC that you get from a normal cannabis plant. It's like a re-engineered kind of thing, and the kids,
Yeah.
you can buy it in the shop. It's completely legal, right? And
Right.
it's THC, but it's not THC. It's a different kind of, and this stuff messes your brain up, man. You know,
Yeah.
it's like alcohol, like it puts you into kind of a thing. So it's just very interesting. You know, the bars of the cage. Alcohol is the most commonly accepted drug that you can use socially, and they want us to be in a cage. And I think the reason alcohol is such an effective cage drug is because of the memory, right? Like, you can't for the hell of you remember what, like, dude, you were dancing on the table last night. No, I was not. Yes, dude, you were. No, I was not. Thank God in my days they didn't have cameras, because I could argue and go, nah, I wouldn't do that. Like, dude, you did this last night. My friends used to tell me the things that I did when I was a teenager. I'd be like, no. And then I'd meet someone somewhere else. They said, oh, we saw you dancing on the table. I was like, I was dancing on the tables? Like what was going on, dude? Like what the fuck? You know? So it's just strange, you know, like how the brain you'll become someone else. You become possessed when you're drunk. and you'll be someone else for a while. And I think this is what they want. They don't want us. They don't want us conscious. They don't want us awake. They want us slave to a substance, whether it's weed or alcohol, whatever. They want us psychologically, physiologically, whatever. They want us stuck
Well, now
in a
it's
cage
AI.
of some sort.
The new drug is technology. That's the new drug. But first, for us to accept a drug, there needs to be an issue. There needs to be a void. So a void is being created in us, and it's being filled. So people avoid the subconscious mind. So they fill it with alcohol, drink a lot and stuff, or do drugs and stuff, because you're avoiding something. What we need to do is, instead of avoiding, you need to go into the void. That is the anti-avoid, going into the void. And the void is the dark, because the black sun is our subconscious mind, is the rivers. And one of the rivers is called Archon. And I think that I'm going to start looking into the black sun, but I think it's Saturn, it's death, it's rivers of our mind. And I think that if we go there, if we sort of connect to that part of our psyche, I think that that's how we start accessing different planes of awareness. It's not just the conscious mind, it's the subconscious. I think that is really, really could be very, very powerful. And yeah, with AI, the artificial intelligence, it's like people need to become more stupid, and people need to be that's why they're pushing so many drugs, so many different vaccines, jab for this, jab for that, whatever, and that's creating a distortion. And then the answer to that would be, this genius, external, mechanical, artificial, just listen to that. And then now AI's becoming doctors. There's going to be an app and stuff where it's just an AI which tells you what's wrong with you. So anyway, I don't want to get into that, because we'll be talking for like much longer on the implications of our AI and health and well-being and our psyche and stuff like that. So perhaps that's a conversation for another time.
I like the question that that Kat asked, which is, could the black sun be dark matter as space and consist a third of dark matter, or something of some sort? And I think that's a really interesting concept, and this causes us now to question the notions that we've been taught. The moon is supposedly just reflecting the sunlight, right? Well, ancient cosmology questions this ideology, questions this as a concept. And how it questions this as a concept is basically like this, right? We've got, and I'll break this down as quickly as I can. You've got the Shushumna, which is like your causal body, right? It's your spiritual body reflected down. The causal, it's that part of you which is at total peace and super conscious, omnipresent, omnipotent, that most deepest core part of who you are, the most divine part of you. And then this is broken into a polarity. And you can see how the polarity is represented by the Pingala, which is a serpent ascending, you could say, and an Idda, which is a current descending. And I find it interesting how they show the Idda as being a warm current descending, and the Pingala as being a cool current ascending. Now, there's an interesting concept behind this. You see, the Pingala represents solar potential and solar energy, which is hot, right? Fire. And the Idda represents what we could call lunar energy, lunar potential. It's cool. Now, I've heard it said often that the temperature is lower in the moonlight than in the sunlight. Have you guys come across this as a concept before? Yeah. And I'm curious. I've never actually checked what AI has to say. Is it cooler under moonlight on full moon than not under moonlight? I think it's a minuscule, and I've seen research about this like decades ago. So AI says it's not. But okay, maybe sometime I'll go and find the research and bring it out there. It's quite interesting in itself. And so anyway, the concept is that you've got the Ida and the Pingala, and that these are two different qualities. The one is a cool kind of an emanation, and the one is a warm emanation. And that the sun is like emanating this Pingala, manifestational, and that the Ida is non-manifestational, and that I believe that these polarities shift. So what is now Pingala and expressive will become held in, and Ida will be expressed at some other time. And so the masculine and feminine polarity shift. This is why we've got the solar deity being masculine but previously was feminine, and the lunar deity currently feminine but previously was masculine. And so when these shift to become expressive and impressive, then the polarity of that deity shifts with the cosmic alignment. And I think that this is my idea. I'm not going to say it's like absolutely true or anything, but I think that like this natural polarity is part of maybe our 26,000 year cycle of being, expressive and impressive. Though getting back to the occult philosophy and cosmogony behind this idea that I've got, is that you've got the cool light and the warm light, and so when I think of this yeah, exactly, Hollowbone. In the shade of the moon, there's the moon actually makes things get colder. Moonlight, it's such a minuscule measurement. It's like a very small fraction of temperature, but I believe it can be measured. And on a full moon, it's more noticeable than on other phases of the moon. And so no, I like to ask AI. I find it's like it's a cute comedy to see what it's going to spit out next, and I like to get it to talk nonsense and then get it to tell the truth and then show people like, look, this is what AI is. It spews at you half the time, and half the time it gives you wisdom. But the idea between the black sun and the light sun, I think, has got to do with polarity, right? Now, if you look at the concave Earth theory, right, which, okay, so there was only ever one experiment that was ever done, ever, to prove the shape of the Earth, right? And that experiment is called the rectilineator experiment. You can Google it. You just have to spend a bit of time like fingering Google up the right way to get Google to spit out the information about us. Rectilineator experiment. And this was funded by, who funded it? It was funded by a university, by the government in America. And it was a famous and really respected engineer. And so, yeah, rectilinear instrument. Right. Now they're lying to you. Right. This is another beautiful thing. Okay. So the this is incredible. Wow. AI is literally lying. The guy who did the experiment was actually trying to prove that the earth was round and that we were on a ball. That's what the experiment was actually set out to prove. But he built this construction using engineering because he was a well-to-do engineer, and he'd been given a grant by the university and by the scientific department to prove that the Earth's a ball, because they wanted to disprove flat Earth for good. But when they did the experiment, they noticed, hold on, we're getting the opposite findings. Like things should be, they built a structure and they followed the structure using sound engineering principles. And they did it for like a mile or two. And they got to the end of it and the readings didn't make sense. It was like the readings, instead of you being on a ball, the readings were like this, like you were in a dip, in a concave. And so he couldn't understand it. So he did the same experiment using the same equipment backwards, right? Which now should give you the opposite effects, right? But it gave the same effects. So as an engineering thing, you use your engineering one way. So he reconstructed the thing and came back thinking maybe it's my equipment, and he inverted everything. And so that if there was that discrepancy, it would be obvious. And on the way coming back, they noticed, hold on, this doesn't add up. So this is why if I stand on my beach and I look across the water and I calculate the mileage, I can see the sea sand on the other side of the water here by the bay where I live. Now, I should not be able to see the sea sand because according to the maths of the size of the Earth, across my bay, there should be a 9-foot drop-off, right? 9-foot drop-off. But because the sun shines on that sea sand, I can see it. I can literally see the sea sand with my naked eyes. I've got good far vision. Close vision's not so good. Far vision is excellent. So I can see the sea sand. Now, when I've gone on the other side of the beach, there isn't a 9-foot drop-off. I want you to understand what I'm saying. It's 7 foot or something, 7-8 foot across this water, right? That should have been, if you calculated the drop off of a ball. So I should not be able to see the sand, right? But you can. And a lot of people have photographed this and said like this is an anomaly. If I set up a zoom lens here and zoom across, I'll be able to see people standing on the beach on the other side, right? But the roundness of the Earth, I shouldn't be able to see anything. I should be able to stand on the beach with my hand up here, and you shouldn't even be able to see my finger because the Earth's round, right? And light doesn't do that. So there are a lot of anomalies that people have sort of come up with. And so, I mean, I don't propose to know the shape of the Earth. I think it's a lot more complicated than round or concave or straight. I think like it's a model of consciousness, and the model of consciousness is expanding and contracting, and we're experiencing the contracting expansion fields of consciousness. So this image that I was sharing here before is really an image that represents this expanding, contracting fields of consciousness, right? Where the Ida field is the contracting field of consciousness, and the Pingala field is the expanding field of consciousness. Or is it back to front? Sorry, the Ida field is the expanding field of consciousness, and the Pingala field is the contracting field of consciousness, which means that the Pingala is electrical in nature and is related to photons, right? And the Pingala is wavelength in nature and is related to gravity magnetism. So we've got magnetism and we've got electricity, and these two together make electromagnetism. And so the idea is that there is a particular light that is emitted that you can't see with your eyes, which is called Ida. And there's a particular light that is emitted that you can see, which is called Pingala. And so in Vedic cosmology, they speak about Pingala as being the life giver. right? And they speak about Ida as being not. Now, when there is the sun is being blocked out by an eclipse, right? It's very interesting because there is this idea in hollow earth theory that suggests that there is another body that we're not aware of, that you can't see, that doesn't emit light. It's invisible. But you can only see it when it covers the sun or covers the moon. And I don't know if you've seen this, but have you ever noticed when you can see the moon in the sky and it's a crescent, and you can see the sun in the sky at the same time? Have you ever seen that?
We were talking about that yesterday, how they seem to be not very far from each other, be a full moon and the sun, like at a 45-degree angle. So how is it on the other side of the world in Australia they'd have to see nothing? And Esme looked it up and she was like, no, it's because the moon is so far away they can see it. But that wouldn't work on a globe. You wouldn't be able to see anything, no matter how far away it is. How on a globe you can't. So yeah, it's weird, you know, how
anomalies
of the world they see. Surely it's neither. It can't be night. They'd have to have, if it was nighttime, they'd have to have no moon because we see the moon, you know. So,
well, what's for me has been a kicker is when you see a crescent moon and the sun at the same time in the sky. And I've seen this. I've seen it here on the beach. I've seen it here when the sun is rising. Now, a crescent moon is supposed to be the Earth's shadow cast upon the sun, right? That's the model that they've taught us, right? So if the sun has risen above the horizon and the moon has risen above the horizon and both are above the horizon, how can the Earth's shadow be getting in the way of the sun touching the moon to create a crescent? If there's an invisible body covering the moon, right, that you can't see with your naked eyes, creating that would make a lot more sense, that there could be a second sun, right? But that sun's invisible. That our suns are part of a two-sun system, but one of the suns is black hole sun, right? And instead of emitting the Pingala range of light, it could be emitting the Ida range of light. And so this could be an explanation for, and I suppose it doesn't matter whether the Earth is round, flat, or concave, because, like, you know, there could just be another sun that we can't see because it's black. So when I think of the black sun, I think of a sun that is radiating a different frequency. And when you speak about Kat, what do we call it? Not black matter, dark matter. When you speak of dark matter or dark energy, I'm wondering whether that is like what we're talking about here. Is there a kind of a plasma that doesn't emit light? So I'm just putting it out there. I mean, I don't know. But it's quite interesting because when we look at this, we can also extrapolate it here. And, you know, you can see it here with a Saturn square. It's the same information is presented, right? So you've got these two triangles here. Well, these two three-vectored points, call them prisms, if you will. And the one consists of 8 being the fundamental point, Saturn. So has Saturn often been related to, you know, to the black sun? It has. The black sun shares some relationship with Saturn. And then we've got the green one, which revolves around 1, 2, and 3, right? Where the other one revolves around 7, 8, and 9. where 4, 5, and 6 becomes the tree. So 4, 5, and 6 represents the tree, right? Which is 15, right? Which adds up all of these numbers, 15, any direction you take it through the Saturn square, which we were talking about earlier. So that 15 becomes the expression of the axis mundi. With 5, Mercury, the principle of movement, in the center, bound between the stability and stagnancy of 4 and the harmony of 6, so that the principle of movement doesn't move. It stays stagnant, but in a state of perpetual harmony, adjusting. However, it produces all of the movement around it. And so these are two things that are spinning in opposite directions around an axis. If you can imagine it in 3 dimensions, that's what the Saturn sigil is really trying to explain to us. So we've got these two different things here. And so this represents, in the same way, from Western occultism, what we're seeing here in the Ida and the Pingala, this is also obviously naturally the caduceus. This is the caduceus wand that we're looking at here, really. At the top of this caduceus, there would be in the center of the eyes there would be 2 petals. So the 2 petals represent the 2 wings and the sphere in the center. So this Ajna chakra represents a circle with 2 little petals on it. The viscous Pisces, right? So it's quite interesting. I don't know. I don't have definitive answers, but these are just kind of ideas that I put out there. And I think like what we call black dark matter, I think that might be a different kind of radiance that we can't see normally, like plasma.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think?
Well, the etymology, looking at the etymology or how it sounds, lunar, lunoir, black sun, black light. Lu is light and noir is black, right? So apparently the moon hasn't this satellite we call the moon hasn't always been here. What it tends to do, our moon, is reflect light. So it seems perhaps it could be emitting its own light, but I think that we have the sun, which is the white light, but then there used to be a kind of more black light, or if we perhaps before the moon was there reflecting, some people call it Saturn moon light matrix. I definitely think that this thing we call the moon has something to do with reflecting light. And the reason why I think that is because on a full moon, people can go a bit crazy. And I think that what I'm trying to say is that in this realm here, we come in from the sun, we're in the womb, and then we're supposed to go out. But what happens is we can get reflected back here, and perhaps this is the white light which they tell you to avoid when you die. Another way of looking at this, Katrina says Saturn's so far away. How can a black sun or black star be so far away? Well, if you look at it as like no time and no space, like there's no distance between anything, the distance of something wouldn't matter, especially if the black sun is more inwards rather than outwards. And I think that I keep mentioning this, but the black sun, I think, is within us. And I think to go outwards, we need to go inwards. And I think this relates to death and dying, because I believe that when we die, we go inwards and we travel the rivers of our mind, which relate to, obviously Saturn's related to death, the Grim Reaper and stuff like that. And I think that it's more of a kind of symbolic language. It's not like a literal black sun or black star. It's more of like the two polarities of you have the white light and the black light. And then I think the black light is in us. And I think part of like the alchemy of this is to do with Saturn, is to do with transforming the lead into gold, is sort of transforming this density in which we're in, which is necessary for growth, which is the confinement, which is being used as a tool to constrict us. But this womb, which is a kind of confinement, is a place to grow. And I think that Saturn governs time and space and density and boundaries. It's necessary. And we need to tap into that frequency, which is out there, but also it's in us too, as above, so below. So I think the black sun, what it says to me is to go inwards and to go travel along these rivers of our mind, like memories, overcoming these barriers and stuff. And then sort of like it's an alchemy, it's an alchemical process, the black sun going inwards. This is why they stop us going inwards and make us seek everything from outside, knowledge from outside rather than the intuition. Even like the element water is seen as a more inwards or intuition or like emotion, just energy in motion. And what's happened is that they've made us externalize, like the black sun is our power. I think it's our core, our identity. It's where our soul is. And I think that's what's happened is that people have given their power away, or we look outwards for guidance rather than going inwards. Because when we go inwards, or we expand and we go outwards. But when people look outwards, you loop and you come back in and you're more constricted. So I've, looking at lunar as lunoir and then the moon being called lunar. I mean, perhaps it's not always been there. Perhaps we obviously have two polarities of the white light and the black light, but the moon clearly isn't a black light. It does represent the feminine, sort of like waters, emotion and stuff. Whether it's always been there or not, who knows? I mean, we've just got to work with what we have to work at, which frameworks we have. And when we look at Saturn and the sort of Grim Reaper and death and stuff, I think that's very important, which is to death, to die is to go inwards, because when we go inwards, we find our gold inside us. And that's turning the lead, or where we've been led, the more dense energy, the density of the three-dimensional plane. When we go inwards beyond 4D, beyond the dimension of time, we cross the boundary of Saturn, alchemize with it, and that's where we find our gold, and that's where we transform. And I just need to mention as well quickly with the Ida, I've heard it's related to water. I'm not sure if like in Norse, the name Ida means water, but it's very interesting that it sounds a lot like idea, Ida, idea, or ID, or identity, which is the bar, which is the water, the soul. The Ida is the water, is the soul. And then the Pingala, they say, is more kind of the electric or more order, which is the masculine, which is the ka, or spirit, or air and fire. So you have the Pingala, which is like the air and fire, and then the Ida, which is more kind of the watery energy.
Yeah, that's really quite interesting, as the difference between like a concept and an idea,
Mm.
where the one is formless, the one is very like legitimately structured. You know, a concept is very, it's got bars. It's got a cage of meaning, and you can measure the bars of its cage of meaning. Where an idea is a much more free thing. It's more emotionally emotive, right? It inspires a feeling. It inspires concepts, but a concept is a very specific thing. Like you're talking about, no, you got to conceptualize this. I can describe it. I can put it into words. I can, like, God is an idea, right? Matter is a concept. You know, I can talk to you about matter. I can define it. God is an idea. Wow, it's got so many emotional implications. Where do you start, right? And so, like, the Ida is that formless sort of, you know, pre-conceptual state, and so it's an unmanifest kind of light from the Ida. That's not easy to put a finger on it and say there it is. Where the manifest light of electricity, you can point to it. Magnetism is like this invisible force, right? You can't, but electricity, you can see it, right? Put electricity on, there's light. There's the electricity. I can see the light coming from the heat, from the electrical current. I can touch it. I can know exactly where it is. There's its point of maximum energy. And look, there's the light coming out of it. Magnetism is a lot more abstract. You just got to trust that it's there. and it's being affected. Things are being affected by it. You see the metals pulling and pushing, but you can't see where it's pushing to or where it's pulling from. It's very abstract. So, you know, that's quite an interesting concept. And I was trying to look up a few minutes ago. So the ancient Greeks used to believe that the moon was putting out cold light and that the moon had its own light. Yeah. At some later stage, the Romans started changing the concept. No, the moon's just a reflector. So in ancient times, it was considered that the moon had its own light. Interesting concept, right? And they also believed that the aether was this fundamental element, like the Akasha in Vedic cosmic science or spiritual sciences, shall we say. And when you try and like ask AI, it keeps trying to tell you, no, aether was a deity in the ancient Greeks. Well, it wasn't just a deity. It was their physics. So, you know, it will try and correct you and go, no, aether's and you have to really start like tweaking your search terms to force the AI to acknowledge, okay, yes, it was part of their physics. Okay, you got me. And the idea that the light of the moon is cold as well, this is an idea that's widespread, and they're continually trying to debunk this idea, right? And I mean, they've got their sort of, we debunked the idea there, the same way that they debunked that quantum fields don't exist, right? Because quantum fields used to be called ether. That's really what we're talking about, quantum fields. The description of ether is an invisible element or an invisible substance or place that connects everything else to everything else with secret pathways, right? That connects everything to everything else. And a quantum field is a place where you can't see it, that's not here, that connects everything to everything else. And the way that the aether would connect everything would be like it would make direct connections between A and B, little tunnels. We call these wormholes. We call these quantum entanglement principles. And the aether suggested that all of matter emerged from the aether. The same way that scientists now say that all of matter emerges from the quantum field, right? So the ideas are quite solid. If you look at the ideas of what the Greeks were talking about with aether, and you look at the ideas what the science are talking about now with quantum fields, it's chalk and cheese. It's the same thing, really. They're just using different terminology. And so it's really interesting how aether was debunked, right? And so it makes me wonder, aether was debunked. The idea that the moon's got its own light was debunked. Same people who debunked aether. Similar time, actually, right? These Romans got out there, they debunked aether. There's no such thing as quantum fields. They debunked the moon having its own light. So it's just interesting. But like sometimes when you look at this and you see the two bodies in the sky, it just doesn't make sense. Like, especially when it's a crescent. And it's quite a head trip when you see that it's a crescent. And you see the sun and you go, well, that shouldn't be happening. Like, is there a cloud making that shape, like shadow over the moon? No, sometimes you see it without clouds. So I just think like there's a lot more to understanding our, like, you know, our state of reality. And when we start talking about dark matter and dark energy, I think we're talking about etheric realms, right? I mean, what do you think about that as a concept? Like places where the membrane between physical and etheric reality are thin. And you can sort of, so what did we speak about in Arthurian legends? Yeah. What do they call that place? You would go across these waters and you would go into a place where the membrane was thin and you could cross over from one realm to another realm, right? Could dark matter, dark energy be sort of what we're witnessing as a gateway between one realm and another realm, like a doorway? And could there be quantum entanglement principles happening there in powerful? Could that be where wormholes can naturally evolve, right? Or could it be the residue left behind after a wormhole has been there? So like I just wonder. I mean, I've got more questions than what I have answers when it comes to these things.
Did you mention what did you mention then to do with crossing the waters? Was that King Arthur?
Arthurian legends. There was a name for it. Yeah, where they would be able to cross into Avalon.
Right.
And there was like certain times you could do it and you could cross over, and there were times when the barrier between Avalon and Earth were thin, and they had actually put up a strong barrier between Avalon and Earth to keep us out because we were like defiling Avalon.
Interesting.
Isn't there part of the story that relates to this?
I haven't read those, but I've heard Indy mention the two dragons and the mists of Avalon, like the mystery, and that reminds me of the two serpents, the Caduceus. But I'm definitely going to look into that, because what you just said is kind of like what I've been tapping into recently, is like our streams of consciousness and crossing rivers in our mind to kind of expand and go outwards. But yeah, I've been writing a few notes down which I'll share, because you mentioned the ether, and whenever I hear the word ether, I think of either. It's like either, like which one kind of thing. So either and which brings me to the word witch and witches, and then liminal spaces, and then Hecate, the guardian of crossroads, more so the tri-crossroads, you know, the Trinity, the 3, 6, and 9, and then liminal spaces, and then the membranes. So when I think that witches were more connected to the ether and able to connect to these liminal spaces. And then you mentioned the Akashic field as well, I think, relating to the ether, which kind of reminds me of Aleph, which would be the first tarot card, which looks like a DNA, the double helix. And then the Aleph relates to the Fool card, which is to do with air. And on the Fool card, it shows him I believe, dividing the waters like Moses did, because the mountains in the background look like water. And I think to go across the waters, we have to either sail on the water or divide the other streams of consciousness to find our path. And then there we get to the Genesis mission and to this AI and DNA and stuff, but I'll put that to the side. I just want to bring up when you mentioned doorways as well and liminal spaces, reminded me of Tartaria and how it's Tartar-ear, our connection to the earth, or Enki, water and the earth. That guardian of those dimensions of the water, memory, and then the Nephilim, and then the Nephilim. The Nephilim being the dream world, and then the Nephilim perhaps building these, being more connected to the earth, to this water, and being able to build these amazing structures that we still see surviving today from this old world. So when a time when people are more connected to the aether, more witches, more witchy energy, this or that world, one foot in this world, one foot in the other, able to pull things back from the dream worlds, liminal spaces and doorways. I think that this was happening, what we call the Tartarian Empire, Tartar-ear, connected to the earth and the heart, and able to tap into the dream world and bring it through our DNA, through the Akashic field, through this Aleph, through the letter A, which is a pyramid, which is pyramid, which is fire in the middle, which is inside us, which we bring forth these kind of light codes or whatever into this realm. And as we speak, we create, like we create children, we emit light from there, from our reproductive organs, we emit light from our mouth as well. And I think that, they're all connected. Tartaria, aether, witches, liminal spaces, more activated DNA codes and stuff. I think that's all connected.
Well, brother, I see we're reaching the 3-hour point. We should probably leave it at that point, on the edge of the liminal spaces, where Tartaria was made unliminal. It was removed from liminal existence to it never existed, like so many other things that never existed, like unicorns or dragons or or the giants or angels or demons. I suppose we could make a long list of all the things that never existed. And I hope you guys have all enjoyed the conversation, everybody in the chat, and I'm sending you all so much love, peace, honor, blessings. Hope you're all taking it easy, but not too easy, but smiling, keeping it sweet. And big blessings to everybody. It's been an honor being here with you, dear General Shinobi, dear brother Toby. I hope Esme's going to feel better. Hope she's going to hope the cow does its work. And big love to you, brother. Om Shanti to everybody. Namaste.